Welcome to G Fun Facts Online. Today we are looking at the immediate future of computing, a future that is moving away from silicon and towards something much stranger. The year is 2026. In the sprawling, chilled corridors of data centers in Northern Virginia and Iceland, a crisis is humming. It is a low-frequency vibration of fans and coolant pumps struggling to keep pace with the voracious appetite of artificial intelligence. For the better part of a decade, the mantra of the AI revolution was scale. We added more parameters, larger datasets, massive clusters of GPUs, and gigawatt-scale power consumption. We built cathedrals of silicon to house gods of mathematics, only to run headfirst into a wall that physics erected long ago. Moore's law is gasping for breath. The energy cost of training a single frontier model now rivals the annual consumption of a small nation. We are essentially burning the planet to teach sand how to think. But in a quiet laboratory in Melbourne, Australia, and a sterile cleanroom at Johns Hopkins University, a different kind of revolution is fermenting. It is silent, cool to the touch, and consumes less energy than a dim LED bulb. It does not run on binary code or logic gates. It runs on glucose, ATP, and ions. This is Organoid Intelligence, or OI, the burgeoning science of biocomputing. For years, the field of OI has been capturing headlines with experiments like DishBrain, a petri dish of neurons that learn to play the arcade game Pong. But recently, the field has taken a turn so bizarre and profound that it sounds less like computer science and more like metaphysics. Researchers hit a bottleneck where raw biological neurons were too noisy and chaotic. To make them useful, to make them truly intelligent, scientists discovered a novel training method. They are not just feeding these cells data. They are teaching them to enter a state of coherence, a low-noise dynamical regime characterized by alpha and theta waves. In human terms, we are teaching living biocomputers to meditate. This is the story of how the oldest technology on Earth, the biological neuron, is being tamed by the ancient principles of mindfulness to create a new substrate for intelligence. To understand why we are turning to wetware, we must first appreciate the inefficiency of our current hardware. The human brain is a masterpiece of thermodynamic efficiency. It contains roughly 86 billion neurons, connected by 100 trillion synapses, performing exaflops of computation every second. It does all of this on about 20 watts of power, roughly the energy required to dim a light bulb. In contrast, a silicon-based supercomputer attempting to simulate a mere fraction of the human brain's connectivity requires megawatts of power, which is millions of times more energy. The difference lies in the architecture. Silicon computers separate memory and processing, known as the von Neumann bottleneck. Data must travel back and forth, generating heat and wasting energy. Biological brains, however, possess collocated memory and processing. The memory is the processor. A synapse changes its strength to store information, and that very change alters how it processes future signals. As AI models like GPT-6 and Claude Next balloon into the trillions of parameters, the energy cost has become unsustainable. We are facing a future where AI development is capped not by ingenuity, but by the capacity of our power grids. Enter Organoid Intelligence. The premise is radical, but simple. Nature has had 3.8 billion years of research and development time to optimize information processing. Why reinvent the wheel when we can grow it? The journey to the meditating brain chip began with a simple question: can a disembodied neuron learn? In 2022, Cortical Labs, a startup based in Melbourne, stunned the world with DishBrain. They grew a culture of 800,000 human cortical neurons on a high-density microelectrode array. This chip acted as a bidirectional interface that could send electrical pulses to the neurons as sensory input and record the neurons' electrical spikes as motor output. They hooked this system up to a simulation of Pong. If the ball was on the left, the electrodes on the left side fired. The motor neurons in the center controlled the paddle. At first, the neurons fired randomly, and the paddle flailed. But then, the researchers applied a feedback loop based on the free energy principle. When the neurons missed the ball, they received a chaotic, unpredictable stream of electrical noise, a punishment of uncertainty. When they hit the ball, they received a predictable, rhythmic pulse, a reward of stability. Remarkably, within 5 minutes, the neurons began to self-organize. They learned to move the paddle to intercept the ball, learning faster and with fewer samples than a traditional reinforcement learning AI agent. DishBrain proved that intelligence is not a software property, but a fundamental property of matter organized into neural networks. However, Pong is simple. To build a biocomputer that can run a smart city or diagnose cancer, we need to scale up to millions or billions of neurons. This is where the chaos began. When scientists tried to grow these organoids into 3D spheres or mini-brains, they encountered a severe problem. Without the regulatory systems of a full body, like sensory inputs or the thalamus acting as a gatekeeper, these isolated brains in a jar drifted into two useless states. First was criticality collapse, where neurons went silent and effectively fell asleep. The second was epileptic storms, where neurons entered a state of runaway feedback, firing in massive, synchronized bursts, resembling a grand mal seizure. A seizing brain cannot compute, it is overwhelmed by its own noise. In information theory terms, the signal-to-noise ratio drops to 0. Researchers realized they were trying to teach a student who was in a state of panic. This realization led to the All Here Biointelligence Initiative and the integration of neuroscience from the study of Buddhist monks. For decades, neuroscientists have studied the brains of expert meditators. When these individuals enter a deep meditative state, their brain activity shifts. Chaotic high beta waves associated with stress subside, replaced by high-amplitude alpha and theta waves. This creates a state of relaxed alertness and coherence. The brain enters a state of self-organized criticality, a thermodynamic sweet spot between order and chaos, where it is maximally sensitive to new information. Researchers asked if they could artificially induce this state in a dish. Could they force a blob of neurons to meditate? The resulting methodology is called entrainment training. Instead of blasting the organoid with high-speed data immediately, researchers begin a conditioning phase. They stimulate the organoid with rhythmic electrical pulses at 4 Hz for theta and 10 Hz for alpha. This utilizes neural entrainment, where neurons synchronize their firing to a rhythm, much like a tuning fork affecting a guitar string. They created a digital ohm, a steady rhythmic background pulse. First, they calm the seizing organoid with low-frequency pulses. Then, they shift to the alpha protocol to align the neurons and drop background noise. Once the organoid achieves coherence, measured by a reduction in entropy, the actual data training begins. The results were startling. Organoids that were premeditated learned tasks 90% faster than those that were not. They showed higher plasticity and used significantly less energy. To fully appreciate why this works, we must look at the cellular level and the free energy principle proposed by Carl Friston. The principle states that all self-organizing biological systems are driven to minimize variational free energy, which is roughly equivalent to surprise or uncertainty. A living thing wants to predict its environment. When an organoid is in a seizure state, its internal model is broken, and everything is noise. Meditation acts as a precision weighting mechanism. Alpha waves turn down the volume on sensory noise and turn up the volume on the internal model. By inducing this state, researchers create a low-entropy channel for communication. The organoid stops fighting the input and starts integrating it. There are deep physical reasons for this efficiency. One is synaptic homeostasis scaling. During waking hours, synapses get stronger and noisier. We need sleep to downscale these connections. The meditative protocols mimic this deep rest cycle, effectively letting the organoid sleep and consolidate data in milliseconds rather than hours. Another factor is the energetic cost of surprise. A neuron firing an action potential is expensive. It consumes ATP to pump ions. A surprised brain fires frantically. A predictive, entrained brain fires only when necessary to signal a deviation from expectation. By providing a temporal structure, the neurons know when to expect input. They can rest in the troughs of the alpha wave and fire only at the peaks, reducing energy consumption by up to 90% compared to asynchronous firing. This is not just academic theory. It is becoming hardware. Cortical Labs has launched the CL1, a server blade that houses biological chips. Instead of silicon chips, it contains rows of sealed cartridges with microfluidic chambers feeding nutrients to living neural networks kept at 37 degrees Celsius. These systems are targeted for specific applications where silicon fails. One is low-shot learning. Silicon AI needs billions of examples to learn to drive, whereas a biological brain needs only a few. Biocomputers could enable self-driving cars that adapt to unpredictable conditions instantly. Another is adaptive cyber defense. A biocomputer could intuitively sense something is wrong in network traffic, adapting to novel attacks in real time. We are also looking at personalized medicine, growing avatars derived from a patient's own stem cells to model psychiatric disorders and test bioelectric cures. However, this brings us to the ethical horizon. If we are teaching these cells to meditate and learn, do they feel? Ethical boards emphasize that these organoids are not conscious in the human sense. They lack a body and a limbic system. They are sentient only in the strict physical definition of sensing and responding. Yet, the meditation metaphor creates a paradox. The free energy principle suggests that suffering is the presence of unresolvable uncertainty. By training these organoids to minimize free energy efficiently, we are minimizing their biological stress. We are building machines that function best when they are effectively at peace. We are standing at the threshold of the hybrid age. The future of computing is likely a symbiosis. Imagine an AI architecture with a silicon cortex handling massive databases and logic, paired with a biological limbic core acting as the intuition engine. When the silicon AI encounters a novel situation, it hands the problem to the biocomputer. The biocomputer, resting in a meditative alpha state, intakes the sparse data, adapts instantly, and hands a solution back. We are returning to the source. After 70 years of building brains out of sand, we realized the blueprints were written in our DNA. To unlock that power, we had to relearn the lesson that mystics have taught for millennia. To truly understand the world, you must first quiet the mind. The data centers of the future may not be loud, industrial warehouses, but silent, warm cathedrals of biological thought, where millions of tiny living minds float in nutrient seas, endlessly meditating on the problems of the human race. The silence is not empty, it is calculating. Thanks for listening to G Fun Facts Online.